Welcome to the Fantasy Football Factory Pod, presented by Miller Lite. I'm your host, Ben Mintz, joined, as always, by my co-host, Steven Cheah. We're going to wrap up a wild NFL Week 2 on Sunday.
Very wild, and hopefully you were celebrating in the victory circle, and you don't have to sweat it out on Monday night. That's coming out Tuesday morning, so hopefully you got that W. And if you did, maybe you're celebrating with the reigning champion of light beers, and that is Miller Lite. And there's nothing I like better than kicking back on the couch on a Sunday, cracking open an ice cold, great tasting, less filling Miller Lite, and just watch my team rack up points like I have for the past 2 weeks. We're having some great dual success in both of our leagues, and things are going really well. And Miller Lite makes that even better. It's just great tasting, less filling, 96 calories, only 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. So you don't have to feel bad about throwing back a couple beers. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So next time you're getting ready to enjoy cold ones with your friends, have friends over, watch teams rack up points on Red Zone. Go to MillerLite.com/fantasy to find delivery options near you. I mean, they have Miller Lite everywhere. Every bar you go to, every grocery store, every beer dispensary, whatever. Or you can pick up Miller Lite pretty much anywhere beer is sold. It's Miller time. Watch your team rack up Miller times in the end zone.
Well, and that's an easy transition because Mr. Cheah is wearing his Bucks shirt today on another Victory Monday. And, you know, we've been referring to touchdowns as Miller times on the Fantasy Football Factory Pod. Well, it was Miller time in that Falcons end zone
a lot
all day yesterday. Tom Brady, 5 touchdowns. Rob Gronkowski, 2 more touchdowns. He has 4 in 2 games. Not just for the Bucs winning, but lots of fantasy goodness here early.
In style. A lot of people were asking if I was worried, at certain points of the game. No, never a doubt. Tom Brady, undefeated against the Falcons, 9-0 in his career. But yeah, he's putting up fantasy numbers. 9 touchdowns. 9 touchdowns in 2 games. He's 44 years old. But again, Bucs receivers, feast or famine in fantasy. Mike Evans, great day yesterday. Not a good game week 1. So kind of pick your poison with those guys. I would lean to try to stay away from those guys if you could. If you're in a season-long fantasy, if you're playing week to week, certainly worth a gamble.
Well, I will say though, everybody was panicking about Evans week 1. I thought Brady would get him involved week 2 because that's kind of how Tom is.
First throw of the game, 20 yards.
Brady's a real smart. He's wanting everybody to be engaged. He knows that Evans didn't have the big week 1 game, so he was looking his way. 5 catches, 75 yards, got in the end zone a little bit.
Yeah,
solid game for him. Bounce back.
Yeah, finished as wide receiver 5 so far. Not counting the Monday night game this week. So. Yeah, you're right. Tom Brady looks to keep everyone engaged, keep everyone involved, and that was the plan right out of the game. Mike Evans, 2 big catches on the opening drive, kept the momentum going, looked for him in the end zone a couple times, had a bunch of red zone targets, came down with 2 of them, which was good.
Well, and the Gronk thing I want to quickly mention too. In a couple of my leagues, I got Gronk for $1 on an afterthought because, you and I discussed this a lot. If you didn't get Travis Kelce or Waller early, just wait on tight end.
Yep.
And I don't know. Who knows what Gronk's going to be like season long because he may get shut down, all that. But, man, 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. I mean, for $1, I've got him starting on 2 of my teams. I'm thrilled.
One of my favorite bets, actually, in the Barstool Sportsbook going into the year was Gronk over under 5.5 touchdowns. Yeah. I hammered the over. He's got 4 right now. Yeah, he only needs 2. We'll probably break it next week.
Yeah, Brady.
And it doesn't look fluky at all.
No, it's not. Yeah. I mean, Tom
Brady
just
looks
trusts
for him in short yard. Yeah, short. When he gets near the goal line, he looks for Rob Gronkowski, and so huge start for him. Some more notes from the Bucs. The running back situation's a mess in fantasy right now. I know Fournette kind of had the most carries, but with Fournette, Ronald Jones, what do they always say? 2's company, 3's a crowd. Now that Giovanni Bernard. Now that he's involved, it's just going to be kind of a muddle mess, and recommend sitting those guys down.
Yeah, he's not going to be a big guy who's going to get a lot of carries. He's a great pass protector and receiver out of the backfield, so he'll play on 3rd downs, but it's going to be Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette. And if you trailed me this weekend with my Bucs best bet, Leonard Fournette over 34.5 rushing yards, that was easy money.
There you go, Mr. Cheah. And Steven Cheah has been very hot. He's got a spreadsheet out analyzing the Data King with his prop bets, and I've been doing some as well. But Cheah, big start for you.
Hot start right now through 2 weeks. My record is 8-8, 50%. But I'm up 20 units, 20.12 units in 2 weeks.
That's incredible.
And I'm hitting on some big props. My favorite bet of the week, all announced every week. It is parlay week 1 is Robbie Anderson, over 55.5 and a touchdown, 2.5 units on that, plus 8.13. And then this week it was Matthew Stafford over 1.5 touchdown passes and Broncos -6 against the Jags. Put 2 units on that, paid out 4.6. And then I did 5 money line winners this week. A lot of people call me a chalk eating weasel, which is fair. But I went off the data play and picked 5 games that I liked the most. I tried that week 1 and I was leading at halftime in all games except 1, but I had 9 games. Spread it a little too thin. So went with 5 this week, paid out 2 units with plus 8.43 units. So rolling.
And check out the Barstool Sportsbook app. We've got player props all season long. I'm also pumped today.
You hit a big one last night.
Yes, because we hit the Sunday night fantasy football factory pod parlay.
The boost.
It was plus 370. And I got to say, I went out on a limb on the one Sunday night because I went with Lamar Jackson over rush yards, Tyson Williams over rush yards, and Baltimore plus 3.5. And to be truthful, the public, everybody wanted KC, Mahomes, and Kelsey. If I had gone that route, we probably would have had a lot more action on it. But we're about delivering winners here at the Fantasy Football Factory Pod. Sometimes what you do may not be the most popular, but we got to the winner's circle, plus 370. I'm a little under 500 on my props, though. Not doing bad, but that made up for it. So glad to see we're off to a good start on that front. Some other stuff I want to get into, but before I do that, talk about one of our other sponsors, our good friends at Chevrolet. The Silverado is the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever. It's strong, advanced, dependable, and hardworking. Silverado is dependable like the people who drive them. The design is big, bold, and commanding, and the truck turns heads. You want to partner with both grit and determination, where anything is possible. You can do all kinds of things with the Silverado, whether it's tailgating, hauling, towing boats or RVs, off-roading, moving day, or helping out a friend or family member, or even taking a road trip. Hop on board and get a Chevrolet Silverado because it's the strongest and most advanced ever.
Love that. So speaking of strong and dependable, Lamar Jackson, when he's running the ball, he was dealing out stiff arms last night. I love to see that. He finished the week QB2, QB7 overall for the season. What do we think about last night's game? Ton of action. Tyson Williams, our guy, delivering steady RB2 value. Mm-hmm. Travis Kelce, obviously, cream of the crop, tight end class, killing it. Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, what a
solid
game. We've been getting, just as an NFL fan, the primetime night games we have gotten so far have been insane. Ravens, Raiders Monday night, Giants football team Thursday, Ravens, Chiefs Sunday night. I mean, we're getting games just going to the wire, and I just thought it was an awesome matchup. I mean, Mahomes and Lamar delivered, and Lamar's just rushing value.
His floor is so high every week.
Yeah, I mean, his over-under was 68.5. We easily hit that last night.
Yeah.
Huge win for Baltimore, too, to finally get over the Chiefs hump. Just huge mentally.
First win against Patrick Mahomes for Lamar Jackson, 1-3 against him in his career. And it just shows like you can beat the older brother in your conference as far as, quarterback play. But it was a great game. Super entertaining. Love the call on fourth down. But from a fantasy perspective, let's kind of break it down and like who you like. One guy I think we've both overlooked. I can hand up admit this, Hollywood Brown.
Well, okay, so Hollywood Brown, clearly the only wide receiver option that even has a chance of being owned on their team right now. I mean, it's him and Andrews in the passing game. It's what it is.
Yes.
The thing with Hollywood Brown, he's gone off week 1 and early a couple of years now. The upside's tremendous. He's not as much of a PPR guy. He's a guy that stretches the field and makes big plays. He'd be a guy in daily fantasy. If you're like in a huge tournament, he's awesome taking a flyer because he can have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. If he can stay healthy, that's the big if with him because he's never been able to do that. But yeah, I overlooked him too. He's made us pay the first couple of weeks. I want to see the longevity with him. That's what I'm still concerned about because it seems like, he's started seasons well before and gets nicked up. But great start for him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 91 yards a game, 1 touchdown a game, 6 catches. So he's a guy that when they have to pass, which it's very obvious that's not their first priority. Their first priority is running the football with their bevy of backs. So Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray. We saw Devontae Freeman have a couple productive carries last night. When they throw and obviously Lamar Jackson, but when they throw the ball, Hollywood Brown's the guy.
Yeah, it's going to Andrews or Hollywood Brown. That's the thing. All these other teams we talk about that have a lot of teams have 3 receivers they're going to this year. With Baltimore, it's 1 receiver and 1 tight end. And Hollywood Brown stepped up. The running back situation there I want to comment on. I know Tyson Williams had a solid game. It seems like Murray, it's going to be a split. Murray's role getting bigger and bigger. So there's always value in the Baltimore running back because they like to run the ball with Lamar and they've got a good O-line and all that. But it's going to get muddled more and more as the season goes on.
Sure. I mean, take a look at the replacements, let's call them. So Tyson Williams is playing the J.K. Dobbins role. Latavius Murray is playing the Gus Edwards role. So I don't think that much has changed. I think J.K. Dobbins going to the season, most people had him ranked somewhere between 15 and 22, 23 on running backs. I think that's kind of right where Tyson Williams is going to slot in. I mean, his over-under every week is about 50 rushing yards, 50 and a half rushing yards. So that's kind of where he should be. And, if it wasn't for the goal line fumble last night where he's trying to reach out, he gets 6 more points there. So I certainly still really like Tyson Williams as a very affordable RB2. And hopefully he took our advice and picked him up in season-long fantasy.
Oh, and like we said, we had him in that parlay last night. It was solid. Yep. I want to touch on the other side. So KC, obviously Mahomes is awesome. Kelsey's awesome. Don't read anything into Tyreek having a down game. It's okay. Yeah. That's an aberration. I mean, he had like 200 yards week 1.
Yep.
The one we got to talk about, and it was a guy I avoided in the draft, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I know that so many people – he was an easy guy you'd want to draft just because he's the RB1 and an unbelievable offense. But at some point, the eye test counts for something. Mm-hmm. And he just doesn't look to have that like fast twitch NFL burst. And I remember his year, he had at LSU, he went nuts in 2019, but the rest of his career didn't really do a lot. And in the NFL, just when you watch him with the eye test, he's not very big and he's not very fast.
Yes.
And so when you look at, he would have to be dynamic catching the ball out of the backfield to have good value, and he hasn't been that. The huge fumble last night. If I'm an Edwards-Helaire owner, because even you look back last year, he had the big week 1 against Houston, but he stunk on the goal line.
Yep.
There's a lot of warning signs that kept me off him, even the fact that he was on the Chiefs. And right now, I'm near panicking.
He was never a guy in college that you thought even close to NFL before he played with Joe Burrow. Like, I was never thinking NFL with him.
And then he's the first running back taken that year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, certainly heartbreaker. We were texting about it last night. I had a big parlay with Tyson Williams rushing and receiving yards and Clyde Edwards-Helaire over. And I think a lot of people kind of got screwed with this. I had the line at 48 or 48 and a half. He had 48 rushing yards going into that last attempt. 2-yard loss, fumbles. Some people had it at 46 and a half, which is even more painful. But I mean, he's tough. The Chiefs' offense, and I think what kind of screws him is his comparisons. Because coming out, everyone's like, okay, here is a running back that has great receiving skills, that is diminutive size-wise. He's just like Brian Westbrook. He is not like Brian Westbrook.
No.
Brian Westbrook, when he stepped on the field, I know he had, I don't want to call it a redshirt year in 2002, but he didn't play much in 2002. 2003, he steps on the field. He's returning punts for touchdowns. He's a different type of guy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not that guy at all. And I think we just have to temper our expectations, realize, okay, he was a first-round pick, but once you get on the field, your draft status does not matter. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a tough flex play at this point. I mean, he's a flex play, but he does not instill confidence in me.
Well, and my thing with him was I thought he was going to be really good at the passing game because he was at LSU.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was excellent catching the ball out of the backfield, and I thought that was going to be where a lot of his values come, and it hasn't happened. And so if he's not going to contribute in the receiving game and he's already bad on the goal line, there's a lot of problems there. So I think the panic, that's one I'm pressing the panic button on. And, we're big on Fantasy Football Factory Pod on staying the course. We don't hit panic too quick, but on this one, I think it's justified.
Yeah. Let's talk about a different primetime game from earlier in the week, and that is New York Giants Washington football team. There's one guy I want to ask you about.
Okay.
Daniel Jones. So he's QB4 right now. I mean,
the hidden rushing value, and that's with value. That long touchdown that got called back.
Yes.
Because he still had a good game running the ball, and also, after what Denver did to Jacksonville, his game against Denver doesn't look so bad. The thing with the Giants, they have weapons.
Now they have weapons.
Yeah, because Sterling Shepard's so much more effective in the slot role.
Yep.
That's what he's designed to do. And now that they have Galladay out wide with Shepard, I know we haven't seen much out of Tony or Evan Ingram so far, but or anything, to be truthful. Yeah. But they've got some weapons. Look, maybe a decent number 2 QB in a 2 QB league. Maybe so.
Yeah. I mean, people look at last year, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That is a terrible year for a quarterback, especially a fantasy quarterback. That is an unplayable fantasy quarterback. But if you think back to his rookie year, 24 touchdowns. I think he had 10 or 11 picks. And he's got wheels. That's a guy who is very playable. And now you're kind of seeing, okay, was last year an aberration or was it the first year? I think maybe it was last year, and he just really didn't have weapons, new system. All right, maybe we're starting to see things come together. He could, he's always going to be a tough guy to depend on. I don't know if he's a really confetti quarterback as a guy who you can see being, a Super Bowl MVP, this type of thing, just because he has the penchant for the big turnover. But turnovers are only worth -2 points in most leagues in fantasy. So you can live with those. Daniel Jones is going to put up numbers. They're going to be in garbage time a lot. He's going to get a lot of chunk yards. He's got a high floor with rushing. I think Daniel Jones is a serviceable QB2. And right now he's QB4 overall.
Yeah, no, I get you. Shay, you mentioned it. So it's a lot of times this is deferring fantasy in real life. The fumbling thing just is not near as big of a problem in fantasy. And that's the thing with Daniel Jones is his propensity to fumble drives Giants fans mad. But fantasy football, especially as you're getting that extra rushing value, there actually is some value there. And boy, what a shoot. Never saw the shootout coming with the football team and the Giants. And I want to go ahead while we're touching on that game. Let me offer some apologies toward Terry McLaurin. Holy freaking crap. 11 for 107 and just looks dominant. You watch the game, like I mentioned, Clyde Edwards-Helaire failing the eye test. Well, Terry McLaurin does the opposite.
I was trying to tell you, my wide receiver 9 going into the year. He's wide receiver 4 this week. Right now, for the year, he's wide receiver 17. But, I mean, he's putting on. And, right now you see the difference between Ryan Fitzpatrick, who we all thought was going to be the starter for the full season. You're not really forecasting injuries to your starting quarterback. But now we see Taylor Heineke come in, play somewhat well, probably a super flex play with his rushing floor.
Serviceable number 2. The question with Heineke is, can he stay healthy? Because he's been back,
Yep.
That's the thing. But for a few weeks, sure.
Yeah, but McLaurin's value is rising now. Like, he had a better game this week than he had. And, week 1, Fitzpatrick got hurt early, so that's tough. But, full week of practice, primetime game. James Bradbury's covering a lot. James Bradbury's a really good player. Terry McLaurin lit him up.
Yeah, no, he did. And he wouldn't have ever seen that much fantasy value coming out of that game. Not a lot to say fantasy-wise on Pat's Jets, other than Zach Wilson is not playable whatsoever, and we never really said he was. Corey Davis, rough one yesterday, though. Thought he had the good week 1.
Yeah.
It was just rough for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets, you're probably going to want to stay away from those guys fantasy-wise.
And the Pats side of it, Mac Jones looks efficient, but there's not a lot of explosiveness.
Yeah.
They're going to be one of those teams that's like a pretty good team, but there's not the most fantasy value.
Here's an interesting one. In half-point PPR, James White has more fantasy points than Damian Harris.
Oh, I believe it. No, White, what a career he's had, by the way. I mean, Kevin Falk had that longevity career back in the day for the Pats, but man, he just continues to get it done. Huge props to him. Moving on a little bit, Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, 3 picks, only 118 yards. Denver, man, great defensive effort. And on the Denver side, we call the Cortland Sutton bounce back. I know Bridgewater spread it out a little bit week 1, but with Jerry Jeudy going down, we thought that'd be big for Cortland Sutton. 9 for 159 yesterday. Love it.
Big time. I mean, he missed almost the whole year last year with the knee injury. We saw an interesting, I think we're starting to see a change. So it is a full 50-50 share in the backfield between Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams had a much better game yesterday. Melvin Gordon had a long catch. It was on a quote-unquote Hail Mary before they have Teddy Bridgewater can't reach the end zone. So they dumped it off and he got 30 cheap yards. Javonte Williams is going to take over this backfield, and he's going to be a guy you're going to want to hold on to for the stretch run, because Denver, I think, is going to be, I had this in my raw data picks before, they're going to be a playoff team.
And his value, look, he's a guy to put on your trade for list right now.
Yes.
Because he's going to emerge more and more as the year goes on. Who knows if Gordon even can stay healthy, too.
Yeah.
With his injury history, Javonte Williams is if you want to make a trade, you're not going to be able to pick him up right now, obviously, but he's the guy to send some flyer trade offers out for it immediately. And Shay, I got to tell you, you got me on him. I've got him on a couple of teams. I think, as we hit the playoff stretch run, he could be very solid, strong RB2, low RB1 if he takes a hold of the situation.
Yeah, he actually is a guy I really like next week as a potential flex play, or even an RB2. They're playing the Jets. They're 11-point favorites, so they're going to run the ball, bleed the clock, and he's just the guy to do that.
Moving on and running through it, Tua gets banged up in Miami. We didn't like him in fantasy anyway, but still, you hate to see him getting hurt.
Yeah.
This ended up just being a super ugly game. There wasn't a lot of fantasy value. Singletary had the long touchdown early.
Zach Moss got some touchdowns.
Yeah, he fumbled again, though.
Yeah.
He had the fumbling problems last year, and I've always liked Zach Moss's potential. I've got him on my bench on a bunch of teams because, man, if you watched Utah play 2 years ago, I mean, he was unbelievable. And it seems like it's going to be a split with him and Singletary. I still like Moss's upside, but he had fumbling problems last year. He's got to quit putting the ball on the ground.
Yeah. Let's go through a couple top performers. Okay. So a guy that I'll admit I maybe pushed the panic button on a little bit too early, Derrick Henry. I mean, 46.7 fantasy points yesterday and half-point PPR. He's overall RB1. I don't want to say I certainly said you should start selling some Derrick Henry shares. I don't know that I'm actually moving from that take because I just do not think the Titans are that good. And going into the year, I thought that they would be kind of that team. And I do think Seattle's like an okay team, and they obviously beat Seattle, at CenturyLink yesterday. So, things are high. He's RB1 right now. I think if you can get good value for Derrick Henry right now, I would take it.
Yeah, I still disagree. I disagreed last week, and I disagree again. And I come back to one of the main reasons. I love that. Love the 6 games in that division, man.
Yes.
You get those Jags, Texans. I know the Colts run D's supposed to be pretty good, but it hadn't looked great the first 2 weeks against the Rams in Seattle. So I just think the 6 games in that division. And the other thing with Henry, man, when it gets cold, they love pounding him in November and December in the fantasy playoffs. So
yeah,
I see where your logic is because the Titans' offensive line has regressed a lot.
Taylor Wan getting hurt per game.
Yeah, and that was a big part of why they were good. The offensive line, a couple of years ago was so strong. But I still like him. For the pro Derrick Henry crowd, which I totally understand, he was my RB2 going into the year. A couple things that are very encouraging. 6 catches yesterday. Yeah, I think he had like 18 or 19 last year. Yeah. So, I mean, if he can do that, I mean, he's going to challenge for overall RB1 the whole season. Every time they get inside the 5-yard line, he's getting the ball. Everybody knows he's getting the ball. He's going to score touchdowns. So that is a pretty safe floor. But yesterday he had 35 carries. He's always a guy that's a high volume carry guy. I don't 35 carries is not sustainable. I know what you're saying because if you look at the whole history of time and running backs, I know he's a different guy. Hits, but I've never seen anything like it. I mean, go back. He was like one of the all-time high school leading rushers from Florida. And then Bama would give him the ball 40 damn times a game too. Yeah. And then granted, his first few years in Tennessee, he was in a time model split. So he didn't come in the league getting the 30, 40 carries a game. The last few years he has, but I hate to even say no one's indestructible, but he's the closest thing I've seen to it. Yeah. No, that's fair. Then it's fun when you watch him bust runs. It's like he looks like he's moving in slow motion, but he gets 4 yards of stride when he gets out in the open field. And so he's just covering so much ground. So I still have faith there. We're mentioning that Titans Seahawks game, another couple points. They got Julio involved yesterday. You and I were really down on him. I thought A.J. Brown would bounce back in that game. They went to Julio. I went under on Julio yards yesterday and I lost it the early second quarter. Yeah. Shout out to us for giving him a recommendation on Dear Mr. Fantasy yesterday with, I remember we got a muddled question of just kind of like flex guys. It's like, all right, Julio is a play here. One guy that has been a standout that I've kind of been tooting the horn of that has been undervalued. He was going as wide receiver 20 in a lot of drafts. He would finish wide receiver 8 last year. Currently, wide receiver 2. Tyler Lockett. I mean, 29.8 points yesterday and half-point PPR. He's consistent. Like, he is very consistent. Last year, he had 2 100-yard games. This year, he already has 2 100-yard. Like, he's a great player. And he's getting that shine now. And you're seeing DK Metcalf is getting all the attention, and he is benefiting. Yeah, no, and the thing is with Lockett, too, the floor is solid because Wilson, he's going to get targets. Yes. Yesterday he's been busting some longer ones, which you usually don't get with him. He's a guy that works underneath. Yep. But when you're in a fantasy league, like, it's one thing, you just know you're going to stick him in there and he's going to get you 5 for 60 worst case. Mm-hmm. And it's just so nice to know that he's just not boom or bust. He's going to be steady every week. And he gets red zone looks too, like a decent bit. Like, they kind of use him like in a Godwin type role, down there. The way with Russell scrambling around, buying time, like Tyler Lockett is a guy that can get free if you give him time. So he's also just
incredible at tracking deep balls.
Great route runner too. Yeah. Just a guy you want. I mean, there's just no getting around it. Let's another guy I want to touch on that note, the Cooper Kupp thing. Man, if you listen to the Fantasy Football Factory pod, we both beat the freaking drum for Kupp. I mean, we went all out. I got him on, well, you got him in the Barstool League. I got him on all my other teams. And, I mean, I had him wide receiver 12 or 13 before. And
we were probably too low on him.
No, we weren't. We weren't too low on him. Because it just, the upgrade from Goff to Stafford, it's monster. And then I love, like, yesterday, we talked about last week. I mean, Stafford, Kupp eating breakfast together 2 hours before the rest of the team gets there, building that chemistry. I mean, if he can stay healthy, this is a dance party that's going to keep rolling. This is not a fluke.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford's just going to air the ball out continuously. Yesterday, Cooper Kupp 2 touchdowns. He finished as wide receiver 1 for the week. He's wide receiver 1 for the season, had 34.3 points. I mean, the correlation between fantasy managers that are undefeated and Cooper Kupp owners is just a circle. Like that, everyone has Cooper Kupp. If you have Cooper Kupp, you're undefeated. Yeah,
just dominant efforts, man. I believe he's got like 16 catches for 273 yards and three touchdowns so far.
Monster.
I mean, you gotta love it. And we said all these leagues in the standard drafts, everybody had Woods over Kupp, and we went nuclear on the Cooper Kupp thing, and I feel justified. One thing on the Colts side, Michael Pittman got a ton of targets yesterday.
Yes, he did.
And then, you look at Paris Campbell being out. Mm-hmm. What do you think there? I mean, he's not a guy that's really on the waiver wire. He's kind of a number 4 receiver on teams. But, everything in fantasy is about opportunity, and they don't have any other receivers. I mean, the other guys, Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox were, and they throw to Naheem Hines, but the rest of that receiving core is rough.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Carson Wentz's injury, because Jacob Eason didn't play a lot, looked awful. I mean, he threw a pick on his, I think, second throw. So I would... Michael Pittman Jr. for sure, if he's out there, especially in keeper leagues, gobble him up off the waiver wire. But I would temper your expectations if Jacob Eason's in. Wentz can manufacture yards.
What are you hearing? It's too early to tell on Wentz.
I mean, it looked like an ankle sprain.
Yeah, it looked bad. Aaron Donald, it looked bad.
He did not go back in.
No, and Aaron Donald, if you watched it, it didn't look fun. I mean, it never is when Aaron Donald's running you down.
Yep.
But that was a tough one. I want to comment quickly on Jalen Hurts. So even with the Eagles scoring 11 points, he had 82 yards rushing and a touchdown. And that's the thing. I mean, the Eagles struggled in this game. And they also, look, and I know I'm going to get flamed all year for the Jalen Hurts stuff, and I deserve that. But this was a deceiving only 11 points. They had a lot of plays called back in this game. Like they could have.
He had the 91-yard throw to Quez Watkins that the guy got tackled on, the 8-yard line.
Yeah, and Jalen Reagor had a long touchdown call back.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those spots where if you looked at it, I mean, you come in and be like, oh, the Eagles was a fluke week 1 against the Falcons. You only had 11 points. Even with them scoring 11 points, man, the 82 yards rushing and a touchdown rushing. I mean, the quarterback rushing yards is the great secret to fantasy, especially if you're in a league that's only 4-point passing touchdowns.
Yep.
That is, some leagues do 5 or 6. That maybe helps the passing guys more. But if you're in a league that's only 4-point passing touchdowns, you got a guy running like Hurts. Look, if the Eagles score 11 points and he still puts up, he put up like 17, 18 fantasy points, that's a good sign for Jalen Hurts owners, even with them having a bad game.
He's QB5 right now. So I think that still is a little bit rich. There's guys under him, certainly, that I would take. Lamar Jackson's under him, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford. I'm taking all these guys in front of him. Dak for season long, Josh Allen. But yeah, Jalen Hurts is having his moment in the sun right now. And you're right, the rushing floor gives him a high floor, so it's going to be hard. And he has job security. I don't think Gardner Minshew, who got traded there 3 weeks ago, is really going to know the playbook and be able to get in yet. So Jalen Hurts is playing well.
And so despite the bare bottom point total for the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, Jalen Hurts still providing good value. And before you pack up for your next trip, check out Bare Bottom Clothing. Their lineup of versatile menswear is perfect for getting it done this fall. They have the internet's best deal. You can get 2 unbelievably soft, lightweight tech tees and a pair of stretch shorts for under $100. Just like fantasy value, you're getting real life value.
There you go.
Out of bare bottom. Don't get caught with shorts below the knee. As an Ole Miss guy, I feel like that's a fair read, even though I think I do rock longer shorts than most. With their 5.5 and 7-inch inseam styles, bare bottom has you covered. While everything is built for value, just like in fantasy, you're getting the softest and stretchiest clothes in the game for a fraction of what you have to spend with the other guys. Get free shipping on your first order at barebottomclothing.com with code FACTORY. That's BEAR, like the animal, bottomclothing.com, and use code FACTORY.
Let's go. Here's one I want to ask you. So, Dallas Chargers yesterday. Cowboys versus Chargers. Who is RB1 for the Cowboys?
Yes.
Fantasy RB1. Because right now, Tony Pollard is RB9 overall. Zeke is RB21.
Zeke did have a decent game.
He did.
No, he had a decent game.
71 yards, 2 catches, 26 yards and a touchdown.
Decent, but no, it's if you drafted him 7th overall or whatever, you can't love seeing this because Pollard not passes the eye test too. You know, that's the thing too. It doesn't. You watch him. He's really good out of the backfield catching the ball. Yep. He looks twitchy. He looks fast. I'm worried I'm starting to think Zeke 60-40, you know, and I think that may be being auspicious.
Yeah. I mean, he got 16 carries yesterday. Tony Pollard only 13, but Tony Pollard with 3 less carries had 38 more yards. You know, 1 more catch for 5 more yards, also had a touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a blowout. It wasn't something where it's like, all right, we're going to rest our starter. Let's, let the young guy get some reps. This was a very close game, and Tony Pollard is stealing reps from a guy who you drafted to be your RB1.
Now, you can't love that if you're a Zeke owner, but I still think because Dallas is going to score so many points that there's value with them. It's not a total panic, but it's low RB1, mid to high 2. Probably mid to high 2, realistically, because of the time split. But still, start him every week. Not a guy you got to put on your bench. Dallas is going to score a lot more than 20 points in games, too. Yep. So, I mean, not a total panic, but maybe adjust your expectations a touch.
Yeah, I mean, it's still 16.7 points in a half-point PPR for Zeke, which is that's kind of what you're expecting, a little better than you're expecting from your RB1. But just, Tony Pollard is starting to creep up a little bit. I'd be a little bit nervous.
Solid flex play, I think, at this point. Or no? I mean, he catches the ball. They use him in the passing game, though.
Yeah. I would be a little bit hesitant just because even if he gets, 8 to 12 carries a game, I don't know. He does have great upside. Like, his upside is very high. His upside is that of an RB1. But I feel like his floor, if he gets, 10 carries for 60 yards, another, 1 or 2 catches for 10 yards. That's not my favorite flex play.
Yeah, my thing with him and the Cowboys, though, and the Chargers, even though they didn't make the playoffs, are
but
pretty
he's
good.
the top handcuff for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is the Cowboys they don't play on a playoff team until week 11. So I think part of that value with them is the fact that the schedule looks a little light. All right, we gotta. It's time to face the music, Steven Cheah. It's a moment. I've kind of been carrying a burden walking in here all day. The New Orleans Saints effort yesterday in Carolina.
Bad.
I think bad is putting it mildly. So, look, there comes a point, and everybody's going to flame me for making excuses because it's what it is. I mean, you are what you are in the NFL. The offensive line got I don't even know the word what happened to that offensive line in that game. And Eric McCoy got hurt before the Packers game early. Offensive line got destroyed up front. I mean, this is I think this might have been the worst Sean Payton offensive effort I've ever seen in his 15 years. Alvin Kamara had 8 carries for 5 yards in this game. Jameis Winston, the leading rusher for the Saints, with 19. But you would think, last week, all the love with Jameis. He had 5 touchdowns. We weren't worried about the 148 yards passing because they were playing with the lead and all that. This was the game with the Saints trailing that he should have thrown 40 or 50 passes because they were down the entire game and they could not get first downs. Threw for 111 yards. 111? Turning the ball. The turnovers, predictable. But would have thought they would be able to get first downs playing from behind. And then the other thing, too, while I'm ranting on this, everyone and their mom an apology for the Marquez Callaway thing yesterday. 2 catches, 8 yards. Look, thing with Fantasy Football Factory Pod and Life, when we're right, we're going to tell you. When we're wrong, we're going to take it. We're going to be publicly accountable. And I was dead wrong. I thought this was his breakout game. I was reading a lot of scouts takes, all that. I blogged the Saints game after the game for the Barstool Book. The scouts are saying wide receivers can't run NFL routes. They can't run the route tree. Guys basically that shouldn't even be in the NFL are out there. You can't block. You got guys that shouldn't be NFL receivers. I mean, not all of that's on Jameis. It's just it's a systematic failure across the board. The Saints will get to go home to New Orleans after next week's game against the Pats, but a lot of guys out right now. Missing Eric McCoy and Michael Thomas, something fierce. Man, and just Jameis 259 yards in 2 games. I mean, somebody got through for 5,100 yards 2 years ago. Yeah. Jay, I know you were big on Jameis in fantasy. How much are you panicking?
I am getting ready to push the panic button on Jameis Winston in fantasy for this reason. It doesn't really have anything to do with the yards, although this is correlated with it. It's the pass attempts. Like last week, it's like, all right, I was kind of bagging on him for only throwing 20 times. Okay, they were winning the ball. They were, dominating the game.
Game script.
They took the air out of the ball. This week, they're losing the game the whole time. They threw it 22 times.
They just couldn't get first. I mean, literally, it wasn't because they didn't want to. They just never had the ball and couldn't get first downs.
I just don't know if Sean Payton really trusts Jameis Winston.
Well, I know he doesn't trust his receiving core.
Yeah.
Next week, bad matchup at New England, too. So I think you got to sit him down next week, see if he make him earn back in good graces before the Saints get to play. The one thing about the Saints, the Superdome's been known to cure some ills as far as offense goes historically. So you sit down Jameis next week against New England and pretty much everybody not named Alvin Kamara, who you got to play him. And then you do wait and see when they go back to the Dome. That's what you got to do, I think. I mean, it's just that bad. And, obviously I'm not the happiest.
Sadly, I think you're right from a fantasy perspective. And I was very high on Jameis Winston. He is kind of a kingmaker from the 4 wide receivers. You see Chris Godwin, Mike Evans turning into top fantasy wide receivers because he's airing it out so much. But if they're not going to air it out a lot, I mean, he's averaging 5 yards an attempt. That is terrible. So it's just short passes. Not a lot to benefit from a fantasy perspective, especially with that receiving core.
Yeah, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin aren't on this receiving core.
Yeah,
that's a big part of the problem. 2 other guys too. When we're kind of going through what was right and what was wrong. I got 2 guys also I got to take it on the face for. Brandon Cooks had another really good game.
Yep.
Shame Tyrod Taylor got hurt.
I know.
He was 10 for 11 or something?
Yeah.
Cooks had another good game. I thought he would regress from his week 1, but he looks to be the only guy they look for. And so, fantasy, I mean, if he's the only receiver they're looking for, maybe he has some value. And also, Kyle Pitts looked pretty good yesterday.
Kyle Pitts did look good yesterday. He's a guy that is super talented. Calvin Ridley had an okay game, but Kyle Pitts, certainly they look to in big spots. Russell Gage kind of got hurt a couple different times during the game. So it's what we talked about all the time. It's opportunity. So, Value Street and Opportunity Avenue. I thought Kyle Pitts was drafted too high. I had him as a sit this week. He proved me wrong. He was, a worthy fantasy starter. He didn't get in the end zone or, put up big fantasy points that are going to determine your game, but he did show that he is able to contribute right away. I think the 800 yards might be in jeopardy. I think he might be number 5. When you
watch Atlanta, their O-line stinks, and so Ryan's going to be looking his tight end a lot to bail him out.
Yep.
Because it's just they're having real problems. And Ryan, by the way, I felt like there was a throw yesterday where it was like Drew Brees the last couple of his years, part 2. And there was like a throw where he super loaded up to try to push one downfield.
I mean, he's a noodle arm.
Yeah. But it just was like, oh man, I feel like I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Maybe he has to look underneath because it's hard for him to push the ball down the field right now.
So I watched every snap of the Falcons-Bucs games. Obviously, I'm watching live. I'm a Bucs fan. There's a guy that needs to be owned in fantasy right now. He is owned in 14% of leagues.
It's Cordarelle Patterson?
It's Cordarelle Patterson. Let me tell you why. He has position versatility. He wears number 84. He's a kick returner. That's his specialty. But in fantasy, he's listed as a wide receiver / running back. As a wide receiver, he's okay. He's wide receiver 21. As a running back, he's running back 8. This is a guy that needs to be owned. Needs to be owned. He's available right now in 86% of leagues. You can plug him in at flex. You can plug him in at receiver, as a wide receiver 3 if you want. You can plug him in as an RB2. And you can get you points in all of those spots. He's a guy, depending on the construction of your team, can make your team better. Cordarelle Patterson needs to be owned.
And how much, on that note, are you panicking about Mike Davis? He had 9.8 points yesterday. I mean, not horrible, but Atlanta's going to be they obviously suck. This is more than apparent. Cordarelle Patterson's much more dynamic in the passing game out of the backfield.
Yep.
And so the game scripts, Davis would be the guy if they're leading, trying to run the ball. But when's that going to happen?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm not super worried about it. As far as rushing attempts, Cordarelle Patterson in both games has had 7 carries. So he's not like eating into his rushing attempts that drastically. I think that's pretty much standard RB2 on a real football team. But as far as, catching the ball, he is proving that he is worthy. The first week, he only had 2 targets for 13 yards, 2 catches, 13 yards. Yesterday, 6 targets, 5 catches, 58 yards and a touchdown. But he does give you that if you're looking at a receiver that's going to be in, the 50 to 70 yard range, maybe a touchdown. If you're getting 7 carries a game, that ups your value, even if you're not making a ton with that. The week 1, he had 7 carries, 54 yards. This week, he had 7 carries, 11 yards. So there is a discrepancy, but he is getting that consistent work. He is a guy that needs to be owned right now. Pick him up. I would probably spend, I want to say, close to 10% of my fab budget on him. He's a guy that is going to be position versatile, will make your team better.
Moving on, we got to talk about Kyler freaking Murray. I know was he your QB1 going in or was 2? No, you had 2.
He was my QB2, I believe, or QB3.
Yeah,
I think it was QB3.
I had Josh Allen.
I had Josh Allen 1.
Okay, I had Josh Allen. I had Josh Allen. I had Murray ahead of Josh Allen, but holy crap, just watching the game. And I know he had a couple turnovers, but whatever. I mean, if Kyler's shoulder was hurt after week 11 last year. And I think people, his passing yardage was really down toward the end of the year. But if he could stay healthy.
He was QB1 before that.
Yeah. And the way he runs. And then, all of a sudden, not just is he good, but you look at the weapons on this team. I mean, obviously, everybody knows about DeAndre Hopkins, who went off first drive and didn't do anything else. You got, week 1, you got Christian Kirk, 70-something yards, 2 touchdowns. Yesterday, you got Rondale Moore, 114 and a touchdown. Max Williams, the tight end, rebirth yesterday, had almost 100 yards. They just got in. I've been bagging on AJ Green. He beat me yesterday I bet under on his total. He had 44 and a touch. He even looks okay. They just got so many ways to beat you. They play so fast on that fast track in the desert. You got to be thrilled with Kyler Murray right now.
Absolutely. I was a huge DeAndre Hopkins guy going into the year. I think I had him as my wide receiver 3. Right now he's wide receiver 7. He got 4 targets. Early on, he made 4 catches. I think he had 56 or 54 total yards and a touchdown. He didn't see any targets after that. They're just spreading the ball around. So you see guys like Rondale Moore, AJ Green, Christian Kirk. I think this is kind of the too many mouths to feed one ball. I don't know how many of these guys are going to be fantasy relevant and dependent every week. Like I would be very nervous starting Christian Kirk, AJ Green, or Rondale Moore in any one of my fantasy spots, even a flex or a wide receiver 3. But any one of them can eat on a given day. We saw Rondale Moore kind of go crazy yesterday. AJ Green also playable. DeAndre Hopkins had a fine day, but nothing that's gonna win you your week.
I like how Chase Edmonds looks just watching the game.
Yeah.
He looks. He catches, but he just looked. Eye test.
Yeah.
Dumb number 2.
He
wears number 2. Yeah, looks weird.
Yeah, I'm not liking the new number thing.
I don't like it on running backs. I don't mind it on receivers and DBs.
The Julio thing. By the way, this is just a very quick thing to share from our stream yesterday. Did you see the Julio touchdown they got called back?
Yeah, 2 feet in.
Jerry hits up Big Cat and said he saw a sign that Julio was going to score a touchdown, and Big Cat fired whatever. I'm not going to say a number because that's not my business, but a lot on Julio Jones at 6-1 to score the next touchdown, and then Julio scores it. Got his heel in, and then they reversed it, which I thought was a BS call. And, Big Cat was crushed. He's like, I'll never forget it. It was really funny.
That's one thing that I've learned from working here is do not give your picks out to the big guys because they will bet it. If it doesn't win, they will remember it, and they will hold it over you forever. Very quick story about a time I actually gave Big Cat an inside tip, so to speak. So I was in Tampa for to go to training camp, and they had a preseason game against the Miami Dolphins, and that night it rained, or that afternoon it rained a ton, And I'm down on the field pregame, and I'm like, geez, it is a mess down here. But I'm, mingling, meeting people, talking to people that I just met and whatever, with the organization, players and stuff like that. So I'm going to my seat. There's 5 minutes to kick off when you have to get off the field. So I was texting with Big Cat and whatever, and then there's like 1 minute to kick off, or maybe it had just about to kick off. So the window to bet was closed. And I said, hey, just a heads up. And I found this out from, I'm not going to go into it, but I found it out that they didn't put the tarp on the field. So it was like a slosh. It was like a slot. Like guys were struggling to, and I said, hey, just a heads up. I wanted to tell you this. They didn't put the tarp down if this wanted to affect any of your bets. And he goes, well, fuck, I already bet the over. So first half goes horrible. I think there's like 10 points scored in the first half. So it's an under. So I was like, hey, whatever you want to do. Like, that's what I heard. Sorry you bet that. Whatever. So the game goes along and the field starts drying up. So it comes down to a final 2-point conversion. Miami hits it. And it goes over. And the Bucs get a field goal to win it. And he lost the bet and wanted to fire me after because I gave him the tip after. But I didn't really have that much. I found out right before, and then I obviously told him, and it didn't work out. So never give guys your tips because they will.
Well, so last year on that note, I was giving out my college baseball picks, just giving them out, not really trying to give them to Dave. And Dave was demanding on the streams, we need Mitzi's baseball picks. And anybody that followed how that went knows how rough that goes.
Well, it was not good.
Good. Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I believe 2-8 in my first 10 in Omaha. So, yeah.
He was on Davey Day Trader calling for him.
Yeah, he was calling for my picks. And I won. I got hot the first week and then got the – to your point, Cheah, you're correct. Yeah. You're very, very correct.
Yeah, let's talk about quick guys to pick up and injury news. So Not a ton of injury news. We saw Baker go down recently. He came in too. We already talked about. Andy Dalton went in. Justin Fields came in.
Fields looked shaky yesterday.
Yeah, Superflex, he's worth a pickup because he's going to give you that rushing floor, but not a ton of playable stuff there right now. The big thing we have to talk about is Dalvin Cook. So, he's a top 3 pick in every draft.
Great, 131 yards yesterday.
Dealing with a little ankle sprain. Came back in the game, played the final drive and everything like that. But how much are you spending on Alexander Madison right now? He's owned in 32% of the league. So, 2/3 of the league, you can get Alexander Madison. Are you spending a lot of fat budget on him?
If I had Dalvin Cook, I would have already had him.
Correct.
Because Cook's had a long injury history in his career. If I drafted Dalvin Cook in the league, man, I would have stashed Madison at the end of the draft just because of his injury history. And if you draft Dalvin Cook, you draft him 2nd or 3rd overall. You got so much capital in there. You got to protect your investment.
You got to have a handcuff. But if you're not a Dalvin Cook owner right now, are you spending budget on Alexander Madison? And if so, how much?
It depends on your running back core situation. But if you're looking kind of weak at running back, I think he's worth 5%. Because if Cook, he's already banged up, and if he does go down, Madison's like a low 1, high 2.
Yes.
So I think just the upside of that makes it worth it. Plus the other thing too, if you outbid a Dalvin Cook owner who is too stupid to handcuff him, that you're going to have trading leverage there too. You can hold that over him and maybe get some value there.
I would actually go a lot higher.
Okay.
I would go probably about 20%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think that he is a guy, Dalvin Cook, we know going into the year, he hasn't played a full season. He's a guy that you need to handcuff. And if you didn't, Alexander Madison, like you said, if Dalvin Cook goes down, whether it be for 1 week, for 4 weeks, for the season, Alexander Madison becomes probably a top 10 running back. So this is a guy who is worth the investment. And right now with Dalvin Cook banged up, have been a guy who's had an ankle sprain or two. If you plan it right after, that's worse for the long term. So we're taping this Monday morning. We don't know his status for this week, but he is a guy that, I was just tooting Cordarelle Patterson's horn. Alexander Madison is my number 1 ad of the week. Okay. One other guy I want to talk about who is owned in 2% of leagues. 2% of leagues. You might not know this name. KJ Osborne, number 3 receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. He is quietly wide receiver 22. 2 really good games that he's put together.
That 64-yard touchdown, like the first play on Sunday.
Yep. He is a guy. Kirk Cousins is airing the ball out. You need to own 2% of leagues. He's absolutely worth a waiver wire pickup this week. I have him right below Cordarelle Patterson, and he is my number 3 guy to add.
Okay. We'll have our ad lists. Our shout outs to Madeline and Richie running our Fantasy Football Factory Pod Social. We'll have our top 5 ads out sooner than later tomorrow.
Cool.
Or today when this podcast is released.
Yes. All right, let's look ahead to week 3. Is there any specific plays that you really like?
I mentioned I'll tell you what I don't like is anything in that Saints-Pats thing. That game just got me really concerned. I think you got to sit down. Everybody not named Alvin Kamara in New Orleans. I'm taking a look ahead of the week.
Let me kick it off with one, and they're actually going to be my number 4 waiver wire addition to add. Owning only 18% of leagues. Carolina Panthers defense and special teams. They had 10 sacks.
Yeah.
In the first 2 weeks.
And they dominated that Saints offensive line, man.
Really good unit. This week especially, they're on the road. They're against the Houston Texans, who are going to be quarterbacked by Davis Mills, wearing the DeAndre Hopkins number 10. I do not love that matchup for the Texans. I don't think it's going to be a very competitive game. I think we're going to see guys like Hassan Reddick, Brian Burns, who's an animal, start eating. Those guys last a long time. And you can too. If you use Roman swipes, the secret to longer lasting sex. Saying the pledge of allegiance in your head, counting backwards from 10. Those things don't work. Roman swipes are the clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, fast acting, and do not require a prescription. Roman can ship swipes to you in a discreet, unmarked package, and each swipes packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipes out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry. You're good to go. That is it. Go to getroman.com/fantasy to get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. Again, go to getroman.com/fantasy. Carolina Panthers defense, they're getting ready to eat. Roman, get ready to eat too. All right, but yeah, the Carolina Panthers defense is a big time play right now. They are, I believe, they're defense 5 right now, which is solid given their schedule. I mean, I know they played the Jets week 1, but they played the Saints yesterday. Did a really nice job, and they just have dudes all over the defense. Like you talked about, Derek Brown, you got Brian Burns, Hassan Reddick, Jeremy Chin is a really good player.
And they're younger too.
Yeah,
and Matt Rule, great defensive coach.
Yeah, Phil Snow.
I'll say this too. You're Cheah. You picked Carolina to make the playoffs this year. That was them directly beating the Saints like that week 2 to get to 2-0. You got to be fair. I mean, it's early, but you're a data guy. The 2-0 thing,
dude. My picks have been really good. So right now on the picks based off of my raw data, things are looking good. The teams that I picked 5 new playoff teams. Those teams, the Panthers, the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Broncos, and the Patriots are combined 9-1.
Let's go.
Like I said, I'm hot right now.
Let's go, Steven Cheah. When you're hot, you're hot. A wise man once said it.
Yeah. So who else do you like to start week 3, Mintz?
Well, I know Arizona's at Jacksonville, and right now, anybody that plays the Jaguars defense, and you look how hot Arizona's offense is, I mean, literally anybody. It's tough, like you said, with Arizona because they've got so many guys. But I mean, I'm going to start Chase Edmonds for sure if he's a close one because Arizona's going to score a lot in that game.
Yep, he's RB 18 right now.
Yeah, I think he's a solid guy. I'm starting because I'm looking through all the matchups and that looks like it's going to be one of the highest over-unders. Looking at the week 3 matchups, there's a lot of kind of lower. I don't expect a ton of high totals like we saw yesterday.
Minnesota, Seattle.
Oh yeah.
Right now it's at 55.5. I think the guy I just talked about, KJ Osborne. He's a start at a wide receiver 3 or a flex next week. I think Kirk Cousins, who's right now overall QB9, is also a start as even a QB1, dare I say it, for next week against Seattle. So I think those are some guys, and that's a matchup that I really like.
Yeah, that is going to be a shootout. Boy, I can't wait for next Sunday night too. Bucks Rams.
That's actually the America's Game of the Week slot.
Okay, my bad. I looked at it and assumed it would be Sunday because how could it not be? But the Rams played Sunday night against the Bears week 1, so that's why it's not.
That's going to be an interesting one right now. So the over
the Rams are favored. So I was 1.5.
Really?
Rams were 1.5. I saw.
Okay, all right. Tom Brady's never played in LA before, per Adam Schefter. So the over under on this game is 53.5. Something to keep an eye on. Last year when they played, the Rams won 27-24, so 51 total. The year before they played, I know this is Jameis Winston and Jared Goff, turnovers and things like that, 55-40. So
remember that game.
95 total points. So the over I like in this game a lot. I think the Bucs are the best. I think the Bucs are the best team in football right now. I mean, they're not even playing great games and they're dominating teams.
The offense is playing great though.
No, they didn't dominate Dallas, but they had them the whole time.
They've scored 79 points. Granted, they had 2 defensive touchdowns, but still.
Right. A guy I like for next week though. We mentioned him before. Tony Pollard. And I said he was like
Eagles,
kind of
Cowboys,
flex
Monday
play.
night's going to get wild.
Yeah.
Could be a good Jalen Hurts game too.
13 carries, 109 yards, 3 catches, 31 yards and a touchdown. So 140 total yards with a tutty, 21 and a half points and a half-point PPR. Tony Pollard next week against the Eagles, a little bit of a favorable matchup. I guess one thing to just recap last week that was very interesting. Elijah Mitchell, the week 2 hot ad on the waiver wire, 14 carries, got a little nicked up. You know the number 2 rusher for the San Francisco 49ers was? Jimmy Garoppolo, 11 carries.
Yeah, I saw only Trey Sermon 1 carry, 8 yards, I believe.
I think he might have had 2,
Okay,
and then the first one was a fumble.
But either way,
and then he got a concussion.
Not good.
Trey Sermon owners right now are panicking.
I still play the long game on him.
Yes.
I don't cut him. I know you're panicking. He may not have value till week 8, but I still think second half he could come on.
Trey Sermon is a guy right now, if people are cutting him or he's available, go pick him up and stash him, because when playoff time comes around, that's a guy you're going to want to have on your team.
I think so too.
All right, and let's close it out with the Barstool Fantasy League, just talking about that. I have 2 specific call-outs. So one, congrats to the experts who are going to be the high scorers this week. Great performance by the Misfits as well. The experts dominating Team ZD with Clem and Eddie. But one team we got to call out. They're my lowest draft grade. That's out of office. I don't know what these guys are doing. Joey Molinaro, my guy. Coach Doug's, Chris Castellani, putting up 67 points. They just made a trade to finally get a second quarterback after drafting not 1, not 2, but 3 tight ends. What are these guys doing?
In a super flex league.
They made a traded for Mac Jones. They gave up Juju Smith-Schuster for him. Okay, fair value. They do not start Mac Jones. In fact, they start Ronald Jones at the super flex, who gets 4.1 points, and they leave the wide receiver spot open. So clearly,
and they have Rondale Moore on the bench, who had 114 and a touchdown, and Molinaro is a Purdue guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, out of office, you look like you're out of office right now. Check your team. You guys stink. Pick it up. It's a disgrace. 67 points in a super flex league is mind boggling. I mean, they're getting lapped by almost everybody. They're going to be last place if they don't pick it up. So hopefully those guys can get it together. The Yak continues our dominant run.
Good win for the Honkers too.
Good win for the Honkers.
Granted, we could have scored 70 points and won. But
absolute layup, yes. Yes, the league's going well. We saw our first trade commence this week with Juju Smith-Schuster for Mac Jones, which we talked about, which is fair deal. I think the out of office actually getting the better end of that, considering it's a super flex league. But yeah, I think things are going well in this league, and the Yak's going to stay on top. Something else I want to mention, thank y'all for joining us on Sunday for Dear Mr. Fantasy. Yep. 11:30 Eastern on the Barstool Sportsbook YouTube channel. We're getting so many questions. We're getting to as many of them as we can, but we just want to thank you guys. Fantasy's all about interacting with the listeners. Love the way that's going. We're going to keep that rolling every Sunday morning at 11:30. 11:30, yeah. A lot of fun. We got like hundreds of comments this week. We answered as many as we could with last-minute fantasy advice. It is typically... we're going to do it right after the inactives list come out. So if there's a surprise scratch, like a Zach Moss in week 1 or a Trey Sermon in week 1, and we have to kind of react to that in real time, we're going to help you navigate those waters. But it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it has. And also, we've been kind of doing our prop plays a little bit on there. Cheah up over 20 units. We're going to run through our favorite top prop plays. And I gave my gambling card yesterday as well. But it's all about interacting with you guys. We're going to answer your questions, but we're going to do that every week. You can count on it. 11:30 Eastern, Barstool Sportsbook YouTube channel, Dear Mr. Fantasy. Yeah. So we will see you then. I think it's time to clock out, buddy. I think it's time to clock out. Thank y'all for joining us for today's edition of the Fantasy Football Factory Pod. And as always, thanks to our producer, Martin Black, our social, Madeline Conroy, and Richie. Cool. Thanks.